Welcome to Wisdom for the Present, where we take ancient truth and bring it into clear, modern understanding. This episode uses AI-generated narration based on human-researched and written material.
Glad to be here for this deep dive.
Yeah, so I want to start today by asking you, the listener, to just take a second and think about the absolute worst part of your week so far.
Oh, man. I'm sure people have plenty to choose from, unfortunately.
Right, like maybe it was a moment of intense physical pain, or maybe it was an overwhelming wave of anxiety about a work project.
Or even just a looping, really frustrating thought about an argument you had with someone you love.
Exactly. Those things that just stick with you. Now, I want you to consider a completely disruptive possibility. What if every single one of those things, the pain, the anxiety, the looping thoughts, the desires, what if absolutely none of that is actually you?
That is a wild, wild thought.
It really is.
Yeah.
Like, what if all of those experiences are just the passing scenery, the weather patterns, or the terrain of a landscape that you just happen to be walking through? And the real you, the ultimate you, is just the quiet, entirely untouched observer watching the storm happen.
I mean, that concept is the ultimate cognitive disruption. It really is. And it's actually the foundational map of reality offered by the ancient text we're exploring today.
Yeah, today we are looking closely at excerpts from the Bhagavad Gita, specifically the teachings laid out in chapters 13, 14, and 15.
Right, because if you want to understand how to maneuver through a high-stress modern existence without being absolutely crushed by it, you have to look at how humanity has tried to map the nature of suffering.
And just to be clear, the goal here isn't a history lesson.
No, not at all.
The goal is to act as your guides in extracting a very specific, deeply practical psychology from this ancient framework. And it all begins with tearing the universe into two totally distinct halves, right? Matter and spirit.
Yes, exactly. It's a fundamental split.
Okay, let's unpack that split, because the way the text defines matter and spirit is completely counterintuitive to how we normally think about them.
It really challenges our modern assumptions.
For sure. The text introduces this fundamental duality. On one side, you have what is called Kshetra, which translates to the field. And on the other side, you have Kshetrajna, which is the knower of the field.
The field and the knower.
Right. Now, I have to admit, when I first saw the phrase, the field, my mind immediately went to physical dirt.
Like a literal meadow.
Yeah. I pictured a meadow, rocks, trees, maybe the literal flesh and bone of my body. But the text is explicit that the field is vastly more complicated than just physical atoms, right?
Oh, far more complicated. I mean, the ancient author is mapping human consciousness here, not just biology.
So what exactly is included in this map?
Well, the text provides a remarkably specific inventory of what constitutes this field of life. It does include the physical elements, yes, but it also includes the unseen vital forces and the biological senses. It actually uses this very striking phrase, calling the body a walled city with 9 strange gates.
9 strange gates. That's such a poetic way to say it.
Isn't it? It's referring to the sensory openings we use to interact with the world, eyes, ears, nostrils, and so on. But then it crosses a line that modern Western psychology usually guards very fiercely.
Oh, this is the part that got me.
Yeah, it categorizes psychological states as part of the field.
And this is where my brain completely stalled out the first time I read this deep dive material.
It's a hard pivot for a modern mind.
It really is. The text says that desire, dislike, pleasure, and pain, and thought deep woven are all part of the field. I genuinely struggled with this.
Because it feels so personal.
Exactly. I get how my fingernails or my digestive system are part of the physical field, but my thoughts, my ambition to be a good person, my sudden flash of anger when someone cuts me off in traffic.
We identify so strongly with those things.
We do. We are raised on the philosophy of, I think, therefore I am. My thoughts are my identity. So how can my own deep-woven thoughts be categorized alongside dirt and rocks?
Well, because the text proposes that the mind is simply a subtle machine. It's just a processor.
A processor, okay.
Yeah, your thoughts, your sudden flash of anger, your carefully constructed ambitions, they're all just reactions generated by a biological and psychological apparatus interacting with the environment.
So they aren't me. They're just stuff happening.
Right. They're constantly shifting, constantly being created and destroyed. The text argues that anything that changes, anything that reacts, anything that can be observed cannot be the ultimate observer.
Wait, say that again? Anything that can be observed cannot be the ultimate observer.
Exactly. If you can watch yourself being angry, then who is the you doing the watching?
Wow. Okay. The anger is a storm happening out in the field. The pure consciousness watching the storm. The thing that never changes that is the knower.
So wait, let me test an analogy here because I really need to ground this in something modern.
Go for it. Let's imagine life as an incredibly immersive, state-of-the-art virtual reality game.
Okay, I like this.
In this scenario, the field is the entire digital environment I'm walking through. But the field is also the headset I'm wearing, right?
Yes.
It's the haptic suit I have strapped to my body. It's the digital avatar I'm playing as. The dragons I'm fighting are in the field. The simulated pain I feel when the dragon bites my avatar is in the field.
All of that is the field.
Even the digital code generating the game's internal logic, like the thoughts and programmed desires, that's all the field too.
That framework holds up remarkably well to the text's ancient description, actually. The physical hardware, the software, the simulated environment, and the sensory feedback are all Kshetra, the field.
Which means the knower, the Kshetrajna, is the actual me. I'm the person sitting safely on the living room couch wearing the headset.
Yes, safe and completely separate.
The knower is totally untouched by the digital fire. And, the text uses a really beautiful visual for this.
The sunlight analogy.
Yeah. It describes the subtle soul sitting everywhere, unstained, like to the ethereal air pervading all, and like to the light of the all-piercing sun, which is not changed by aught it shines upon.
It's a perfect image. The sunlight hitting a landfill doesn't absorb the garbage and become dirty.
Right.
And the sunlight hitting a diamond mine doesn't become wealthy. It just illuminates whatever is in the field.
It just shines.
Exactly. The author is defining pure consciousness as a detached, illuminating presence. The text says, only that knowledge knows which knows the known by the knower.
That's a bit of a tongue twister.
It is, but it basically means the spirit surveys and views the field, but it does not act within it. And the text reveals a profound spiritual dimension to this observer.
How so?
The voice delivering this wisdom representing the divine states. In all fields, I am Kshetrajna. I am what, Certes?
Oh, wow. That reframes the entire concept of what it means to be wise.
Completely.
If I'm understanding this correctly, acquiring wisdom isn't about memorizing a massive encyclopedia of facts about the field.
No, not at all.
It's not about becoming a better player of the VR game or figuring out how to slay the dragon more efficiently. True wisdom is simply the act of remembering that you are on the couch.
That's it.
It's the ability to surgically separate the observer from the observed.
And that separation brings a terrifying clarity regarding the nature of the game itself. The text defines this ultimate perception as recognizing the certitude of ill in birth, death, age, disease, suffering, and sin.
The certitude of ill, that's heavy.
Very heavy. Once you separate yourself as the knower, you look at the field and realize that the very nature of biological and psychological existence is bound to decay, suffering, and limitation. It's inevitable.
But see, that brings up a massive contradiction for me.
Okay, let's hear it.
Let's go back to the couch. If the real me is just the knower, sitting in total unstained safety, why is my daily life so incredibly stressful?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right. Why is it so easy for us to forget the living room and believe we are the avatar? Why do I feel actual genuine heartbreak when my virtual character takes damage? Why do we get so hopelessly lost in the simulation?
Because the simulation is designed to be inescapable.
Ooh.
It really is. The text describes this tragedy of human existence with absolute precision. It states that the spirit, linked to molded matter, entereth into bond with qualities by nature framed, and thus married to matter, breeds the birth again.
Married to matter.
Yes. The union of pure consciousness with the sensory machinery of the body is so overwhelming, so intoxicating and immersive, that the consciousness loses its sense of self.
So the sunlight, forget it's the sun.
Exactly. The sunlight forgets it is the sun and begins to believe it is the object it is illuminating. It identifies so fiercely with the flesh and the mind that it feels the field's pain and pleasure as its own ultimate reality.
Married to matter. That is such an evocative phrase. It implies a total binding commitment to the physical illusion.
A bond that is very hard to break.
Which means this philosophical split between the field and the knower isn't just like an intellectual puzzle to stroke our egos.
No, it's highly practical.
If we are completely blinded by this marriage to matter, then figuring out how to get a divorce, so to speak, is a matter of survival. It's about figuring out how to stop suffering.
Precisely.
And to really grasp the weight of this existential panic, We have to look at the specific humans involved in this conversation, because this dialogue isn't happening in a quiet university library, is it?
No, it is taking place in an environment of extreme duress. The two figures conversing here are Arjuna, the son of Kunti, an Indian prince and his divine guide, referred to as gracious Kesava, or the Lord.
Okay, so a prince and a divine guide.
Yes, and Arjuna is actively seeking clarity amidst massive, life-altering confusion. He is a man begging for answers.
He's desperate.
He is. He explicitly asks, "Now what I hear, of life which seems and soul beyond which sees." He needs to understand the difference between the illusion of the field and the reality of the knower, because the demands of the physical world are literally tearing him apart.
And we have to look at the terrifying scale of the ancient world he was living in, because the cosmological backdrop of this text gave me vertigo just reading it.
It's massive.
We modern people get stressed about our 5-year plans. But the text is talking about kalpas and prayas.
Those concepts are so vital for understanding the existential dread of the ancient audience.
Break those down for us.
Well, the ancient Indian conception of time was not a straight progressive line leading to a utopian future like we often think of today. It was a terrifying infinite circle.
An endless loop.
Right. A kalpa is an incredibly vast cosmic era, essentially the lifespan of a whole universe. A pralaya is the inevitable dissolution, the cosmic destruction that follows.
And then what?
And then the cycle simply restarts. For the people hearing this text originally, existence was an endless, exhausting treadmill.
It's like being trapped in an escape room.
That's a good way to put it.
You spend your whole life frantically solving the puzzles, but when you finally unlock the final door, you don't go free. You just wake up in a brand new, slightly different escape room, and the timer starts ticking again.
That is precisely the terror. The text refers to souls being born anew in some unlighted room or sinking to lower deeps.
Right.
The belief was that your actions in this life dictated what specific form or yoni you would take in the next cycle. Liberation for this ancient audience was not about manifesting a slightly better career or having a peaceful retirement or fixing a relationship.
The stakes were way higher.
Infinitely higher. The ultimate goal was to drink the Amrit, the nectar of immortality, and completely overpass death so that you never, ever return to what the text literally calls the bodily prison.
Okay, here's where my brain hits another roadblock in this deep dive.
What's that?
I look at Arjuna. The guy's a prince. He's an active leader with massive worldly duties. He presumably has a kingdom to govern, politics to navigate, and given his title, battles to fight.
Very true.
He is up to his neck in the field. Yet, his guide is giving him this ultimate mind-bending cosmic download about how the entire physical universe is a contaminated prison that must be escaped permanently.
It seems contradictory.
Yeah. Was this intense philosophy actually meant for everyday people trying to raise kids and do their jobs? Or was this strictly the domain of ascetics and monks who could afford to hide in a cave and meditate all day?
That tension is the central genius of the text, actually. It refuses to let Arjuna run away to a cave.
Oh, really?
Yes. It demands that the highest, most abstract cosmic truth be applied directly in the middle of a messy, demanding, violent, ordinary life.
In the middle of the chaos.
Exactly. It insists that the ultimate liberation, the state where a person never again shall he take on its load, can be achieved not just by meditating in isolation, but by shifting one's internal orientation while acting in the world.
How does it phrase that?
The text mentions that some find the soul by meditation, some by philosophy, but crucially, some by works.
Some by work. So the goal isn't necessarily to physically stop doing the laundry or governing the kingdom or answering the email.
No, you still have to do all of that.
It's about completely revolutionizing how you relate to those actions while you are doing them. It's about doing the laundry while remembering you're the sunlight, not the dirt.
Yes, beautifully said. The instruction is to remain internally seated on the couch while your avatar plays the game. And while the ancient context was fiercely focused on escaping a literal cycle of reincarnation, the actual mechanics the text uses to describe how we get trapped in the game offer one of the most brilliant psychological maps ever devised.
Which leads us directly to the next question.
Yeah.
If we are trapped in this VR game, what is the actual code keeping us hooked?
What's the programming?
Yeah, why can't we just easily put the controller down? The text answers this by introducing the 3 qualities of nature, also known as the Gunas. It states very clearly, these 3 bind down the changeless spirit in the changeful flesh.
The Gunas are so fascinating. They're the 3 fundamental gears of human energy and psychological momentum.
What are they?
The text identifies them as sattvan, rajas, and tamas. The broad English translations used here are soothfastness, passion, and ignorance. They are the invisible forces that dictate how we react to every single stimulus in the field.
Let's spend some serious time translating these into 21st century realities, because when you read the descriptions of these three qualities, it feels like the author has been reading our modern diaries.
It's incredibly relevant today.
Let's start at the bottom, with tamas, which the text translates as ignorance.
Right. The text describes tamas as being begot of darkness. It binds mortal men's souls to stupor, sloth, and drowsiness.
Sloth and drowsiness.
Yes. It is the root cause of bewilderment. As the author writes, darkness and dullness, sloth and stupor are, 'tis ignorance hath caused them.
If we pull tamas into our world today, this is the exact anatomy of burnout.
Oh, absolutely.
Imagine that feeling when you've been doom scrolling on your phone for 3 solid hours. Your eyes hurt, your brain is entirely numb, but you literally cannot summon the physical willpower to move your thumb and close the app.
You're just paralyzed.
Exactly. It's the heavy, paralyzing weight of a depressive episode, where just looking at the laundry basket feels like staring at Mount Everest. You are trapped in total inertia, completely bewildered as to why you can't just get off the couch. That physical and mental gravity that is tamas.
And importantly, tamas is characterized by a complete lack of clarity. You aren't just tired, you are confused about the nature of reality.
You're in a fog.
A deep fog. You are fully submerged in the illusion of the field, but you lack even the energy to interact with it.
So, if tamas is being completely stuck in the mud with the engine dead, let's look at the second quality, rajas, or passion.
This is a big one for our culture.
Yeah, the text says rajas is kin to appetite and breeding impulse and propensity. It is characterized by words like longing, ardor, unrest, and the impulse to strive and gain, and avarice.
And the most vital mechanism of rajas is how it traps you. The text says it binds the embodied soul by tie of works and by toilsome strain. It is the relentless engine of desire.
So you're constantly chasing something.
Constantly. You see something in the field, you want it, you expend massive energy to get it, and the moment you possess it, the desire simply shifts to a new object.
Rajas is modern hustle culture perfectly distilled.
Without a doubt.
It is the anxiety of needing to constantly produce, consume, and achieve. Think about the person who checks their work, Slack messages at 11:00 p.m. on a Sunday, heart-pounding, terrified they are falling behind.
We all know that feeling.
It's the absolute obsession with hitting the next quota, buying the bigger house, getting the promotion. And the tragedy, as the text explicitly points out, is that the fruit of lusts is always pain and toil.
Because the goalpost always moves.
Right. The promotion doesn't bring peace. The bigger house just brings a bigger mortgage and more unrest. You are flooring the gas pedal until the engine starts smoking, but you never actually arrive anywhere.
Because rajas inherently assumes that acquiring more pieces of the field will somehow nourish the knower, which, as we established earlier, is impossible.
Right. The sunlight doesn't eat the garbage.
Exactly. The sunlight cannot be nourished by the objects it shines upon, so the soul in rajas is perpetually starved and perpetually striving.
Man. Okay, this leaves us with the third and highest quality, sattvan, translated here as soothfastness. If tamas is the dead engine and rajas is the smoking gas pedal, sattvan sounds like I'm cruising smoothly down the highway on a beautiful sunny day.
It does sound like that. It is the most elevated state within the field. Sattvan is associated with purity, living unsullied, and being enlightened.
It sounds ideal.
The text describes it beautifully. When at all gateways of the body shines the lamp of knowledge, then may one see while soothfastness settled in that city reigns. It is characterized by sweet truth, clarity, and harmony.
So in modern terms, sattvan is the pursuit of flow states.
Yeah, that's a perfect modern equivalent.
It's the clarity of a perfectly executed morning routine. It's that deep, resonant feeling of peace you get after a profound conversation with a friend or a long walk in nature or an amazing yoga class. It's wellness.
It's what everyone is selling right now.
Literally. It's the ultimate goal of basically every self-help book published in the last 20 years. We spend all our energy trying to drag ourselves out of the mud of tamas, fighting through the anxiety of rajas, just to finally reach the pure, happy state of sattvan.
Which brings us to the most counterintuitive, radical twist in the entire psychological framework.
Okay, brace me.
The text states that sweet soothfastness binds the sinless soul to happiness and truth. It binds souls in pleasant wise to flesh.
Wait, I have to stop you.
I knew you would.
The text is saying that the good gear, The pure, happy, enlightened gear is also a trap.
Yes, it is.
How can happiness and purity possibly be a trap for modern learners? If I am peaceful and mindful in doing my yoga, haven't I won the game?
You have mastered the game, but you are still in the game. That is the fundamental issue.
Still in the VR headset.
Exactly. If you become attached to your own peace, your perfectly curated morning routine, your feeling of moral purity, you are still profoundly attached to the shifting realities of the field.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Think about it. What happens when your perfect morning routine is interrupted by a screaming toddler? What happens when a neighbor fires up a leaf blower during your serene meditation?
I get furious. I completely lose my mind because they ruin my peace.
Exactly. And the moment that fury arises, you have plunged straight back into rajas or tamas. Your happiness was entirely dependent on external conditions remaining perfect.
Oh.
You were identifying as the happy, peaceful avatar rather than the knower on the couch. The text warns that even the highest moral and psychological states are just gold handcuffs. You upgraded your prison cell, but you are still bound to the flesh in a pleasant wise.
That is a deeply uncomfortable reality check. It means all three qualities are just a churning cycle.
A constant rotation.
The text says, passion and ignorance, once overcome, leave soothfastness. Where this, with ignorance are absent, passion rules. It's like a washing machine.
That's exactly what it is.
You are just being tumbled relentlessly between exhaustion, ambition, and fragile peace. You can't stay in any one state forever because the field is defined by change.
Right.
So if the ultimate goal isn't just to be happy in Satwan, if the goal is to actually get out of the vehicle entirely, how do we do it?
Hey, well, the author doesn't just leave us trapped in the washing machine. The text provides a very specific, albeit harsh, actionable tool.
Tell me.
To introduce it, the text uses a massive, sprawling metaphor. It describes the aswatha, the cosmic banyan tree, but it is an upside-down tree, which hath its boughs beneath its roots above.
The imagery is wild. The branches shoot down to the earth and the roots reach up.
It's an incredible visual.
The text says the tree is nourished by the senses, and its hanging rootlets seek the soil. As actions wrought amid this world of men, bind them by ever-tightening bonds again.
And it continues.
Yeah, it says its silver sprays and blooms leap to quick life at kiss of sun and air, as men's lives quicken to the tempting sphere of wooing sense.
So the tree represents the sprawling, infinitely complex network of our sensory attachments and karmic bonds. Every time we desire something, every time we act out of rajas or sink into tamas, we are growing a new rootlet that binds us tighter to the dirt of the field.
And the practical instruction the text gives for dealing with this massive clinging tree is violently direct.
It doesn't sugarcoat it.
No. It says, the axe of sharp detachment you would whet, and cleave the clinging snaky roots and lay this aswatha of sense life low. The axe of detachment. How do we practically wield an axe like that in our daily lives?
We wield it by cultivating profound equanimity. The text provides the exact markers of a person who has surmounted the three qualities and is actively swinging that axe.
What do they look like?
When asked what this looks like, the text describes someone who, with equanimity surveys, luster of goodness, strife of passion, sloth of ignorance, not angry if they are, not wishful when they are not.
This is what we might call the practice of the witness. It fundamentally changes how you interact with your own psychology.
It's a complete shift in perspective.
When you feel that overwhelming ambition of rajas at work, or the paralyzing exhaustion of tamas at home, the practice is to refuse to identify with it.
The specific instruction is to stand off. The text says such a person sits serene. When troubles break, these be the qualities.
These be the qualities.
Exactly. You do not say, I am a depressed person or I am an angry person. You observe the biological and mental weather and you simply note it. Sloth is currently happening in the field. Passion is currently happening in the field. The knower remains seated, watching the rainfall.
It's like looking at a weather radar. Ooh. Looks like a heavy storm of rajas moving in this afternoon. It instantly distances you from the emotion.
It creates that necessary gap.
But the text pushes this equanimity to an extreme level. It describes a person to whose deep-seeing eyes the clod, the marble, and the gold are one, whose equal heart holds the same with honor or dishonor.
That's the ultimate test. Treating a lump of dirt, a piece of common marble, and a solid bar of gold as having the exact same intrinsic value to your soul.
And treating honor and dishonor the same?
Yes. Treating the highest praise and the most vicious insult as sounding exactly the same to your ear.
I want you, the listener, to test this in your own life right now. What is the gold in your life that is causing you massive churning anxiety to protect? Is it your reputation at the office? Your bank account? Your perfectly manicured lawn?
We all have our gold.
We do. And what is the clod of dirt you are looking at with disdain? A tedious administrative task, a frustrating commute, a coworker you can't stand.
Imagine leveling all of that out.
Yeah, imagine what your Tuesday would feel like if you viewed the scratched bumper on your car and a lump of dirt in the garden with the exact same inner stillness.
It would completely neutralize the power the world has over you. If honor and dishonor are truly the same, then the fear of criticism vanishes. You are no longer, as the text implies, a sleeping tree being violently tossed around by what blast of tempest tears them. You are immovable.
This level of Jedi-like serenity sounds incredible in theory. I think everyone listening wants to be that unshakable, bulletproof person.
Who wouldn't?
But when we look closer at the specific instructions the text gives for achieving this, we slam into a massive wall. We hit serious friction with our modern values.
A friction is undeniable, because wielding the axe of detachment requires cutting roots that modern humans consider to be the very foundation of a good moral life.
Right.
When the text lists the attributes of true wisdom, it includes traits we applaud, like humbleness, truthfulness, and harmlessness. But it also issues commands that are deeply jarring.
Extremely jarring. It demands contempt of sense delights. Try practicing that in a modern consumer economy built entirely on sensory gratification.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, and it demands shunning noise of foolish crowds, which essentially translates to deleting your social media, skipping the networking events, and isolating yourself.
It's very countercultural.
But the hardest pill to swallow is this one. Detachment, lightly holding unto home, children and wife, and all that bindeth men. And later it adds the mandate to hold friends and unto foes alike intolerance.
It is entirely logical that a modern reader would recoil at these instructions.
I'm going to aggressively push back on this on behalf of the listener, because my instinct is to reject this completely. Treating my spouse and my kids with the exact same lightly holding energy as a stranger on the street.
It sounds incredibly cold.
It does. Treating my oldest, dearest friend with the same tolerance as someone actively trying to ruin my life. We are culturally wired to believe that passionate romantic love, fierce protective parenting, and deep community bonds are the absolute highest peaks of the human experience.
And rightly so in many ways.
So the text seems to be advocating for emotional flatlining. Doesn't this ancient wisdom just sound like a recipe for a lonely, nihilistic life? Are we supposed to just emotionally abandon our families so we can sit alone in the ethereal air?
If you misinterpret the mechanics of detachment, yes, it sounds like cold, sociopathic neglect, but we have to look much closer at what the author is actually trying to dismantle here.
Okay, explain.
The text is not telling you to stop feeding your children or to treat your spouse with cruelty. It is diagnosing the root cause of why human relationships so often become toxic and agonizing.
And what's the root cause?
It is warning against making your loved ones the ultimate anchors of your spiritual survival.
Okay, walk me through that. How does lightly holding actually make me a better spouse or parent?
Let's apply the map we've been using. Your children, your spouse, your friends, they are magnificent, beautiful, complex elements, but they are elements of the field.
The field, right.
They are subject to change, disease, shifting moods, and ultimately death. If you tie your ultimate identity, your peace as the knower, to the permanent stability of your child, you are building a house on shifting sand.
Because they're going to change.
Exactly. You will be consumed by the anxiety of trying to control them. If you try to force your spouse to conform to your perfect ideal of what a marriage should be, you are operating in rajas, striving, grasping, demanding. You are turning them into a possession. You are binding yourself to the roots of the tree.
So if I'm terrified of losing them, I end up suffocating them.
Precisely. True detachment is not the absence of love. It is the absence of clinging. It means recognizing that your child is also a divine spirit, a knower, experiencing their own journey through the field.
And you can't control their journey.
You cannot control their reality any more than you can control the tide. Lightly holding means you have the freedom to love them fully, radically, and generously, precisely because you are not paralyzed by the terror of losing them. You do not need them to be perfect for you to be whole.
That reframing changes everything. It's the difference between holding a precious jewel with an open palm versus a clenched fist.
That's a great analogy.
If you clench your fist, you might crush the jewel. Or at the very least, your hand will cramp and ache constantly. If you hold it in an open palm, you can admire its beauty completely.
Yes.
And yes, if the wind blows and it rolls away, You will experience the biological grief of the field, but your ultimate self, your knower, isn't destroyed. Still, this friction brings up an absolutely essential skill for anyone trying to extract wisdom from a 2,000-year-old document. We have to learn how to sift the enduring gold from the cultural dirt of the era in which it was written.
Sifting the text is the only way to engage with it responsibly. We cannot simply swallow every word as literal, infallible instruction without examining the ancient social and spiritual mechanics the author took for granted.
We have to separate the map from the dogma.
Exactly. We have to distinguish the profound psychological map from the specific ancient dogma.
So let's do that sifting process. What is the enduring wisdom here? What is the gold?
I'd say the psychological framework is the gold.
Yeah, I would argue that the operating system of consciousness they designed is flawless. The split between the field and the knower gives us a desperately needed way to disidentify from our anxiety.
Absolutely.
The categorization of human energy into the three Gunas, Sattva, and Rajas, Tamas is a brilliant diagnostic tool for modern mental health. And the fundamental truth that chasing endless sensory pleasure leads directly to suffering is practically an observable law of physics.
I agree completely. That is the psychological operating system, and it runs perfectly on a 21st century brain. But the ancient hardware that system was originally installed on includes concepts that a modern reader should rightfully approach with intense scrutiny.
For example, the extremely literal view of physical existence as a contaminated bodily prison that must be permanently escaped.
Yes, that's a big one.
If you take that world-denying philosophy to an extreme, it can lead to a dangerous devaluation of the physical world. Like, why care about the environment or social justice or human connection if the entire goal is to permanently eject yourself from the simulation?
That is a very real danger of misapplying the philosophy. And further, we must scrutinize the hierarchical, punitive karmic worldview presented, particularly in Chapter 14.
What does it say there?
The text outlines that those who die in soothfastness go to a pure place. Those in impulse pass into the world of working spirits. But it issues a dark warning.
I remember this part.
It says, if it dies in hardened ignorance, that blinded soul is born anew in some unlighted room, and says, darkened souls sink back to lower deeps, loaded with witlessness.
That language is really tough. Unlighted wombs and loaded with witlessness. It feels incredibly punitive.
It does.
It suggested a literal cosmic hierarchy where your current state of ignorance dictates a punishing rebirth. I can't get behind the idea of a cosmic DMV assigning people to lower deeps based on their Gunas.
And you don't have to. That literal interpretation carries immense cultural assumptions about purity, social caste, and divine punishment that are artifacts of the ancient world.
Okay, good. So how do we interpret it?
However, if we translate that ancient hardware into a modern psychological metaphor, the truth remains valid. If you live your entire life consumed by tamas, by sloth, ignorance, and bitterness, the rebirth you experience every single morning when you wake up will be darker.
Oh, I see.
Your habits build the womb of your future reality. It is a description of psychological momentum, not necessarily a cosmic threat.
It's exactly like finding an incredible ancient recipe for a health tonic.
A recipe? How so?
Well, the nutritional science behind why those specific herbs work together is perfectly sound today. It will genuinely nourish your body, but the recipe might also include instructions to stir it with a cursed bone, and boil it over a literal dung fire in a cave to ward off evil spirits.
Okay, I love this.
Right. We don't have to use the dung fire just because the original author did. We can cook the recipe on a modern stove. We can adopt the psychology of detachment without adopting the literal fear of being reborn into a lower caste.
That careful discernment is the hallmark of true wisdom. We are engaging in an active dialogue with the past, not blindly submitting to it.
Exactly.
And the beautiful thing is, when we strip away those ancient cultural specifics, when we clear away the smoke of the dung fire, as you said, what remains is a core, piercing human insight that echoes across time, across geography, and across countless other philosophical traditions.
Let's trace that echo, because this search for the unstained center isn't just an ancient Indian concept. In chapters 13 and 15, the text tries to describe the ultimate reality. It uses names like Parabrahm, the All, and the Purushottama, the Life Supreme.
The language the author uses to point toward this ultimate is breathtaking because it relies almost entirely on paradox.
Paradox.
Yeah, it cannot be defined by what it is, only by what it isn't. It is called the uncreated. It is not form nor the unformed, yet both and more.
It's beyond description.
Yes. The text says, "He is within all beings and without, motionless, yet still moving." And my personal favorite description, "The light of lights he is, in the heart of the dark shining eternally."
There's also this incredibly delicate image it uses to describe how this sovereign soul interacts with the physical body. It says it gathers up the senses when entering or quitting the flesh, as the wind gathers scents blowing above the flower beds.
So beautiful.
It just carries the aroma of the life it lived without ever actually becoming the flower itself.
When you look closely at that description of the unstained knower, you realize you are looking at the exact same core truth discovered by other profound human traditions.
Like which ones?
If you read the Stoics, particularly Marcus Aurelius, you find extensive writings about the inner citadel. The Stoics argued for a rational, ruling center of the mind that absolutely cannot be breached or harmed by external events, regardless of how chaotic the field becomes.
It's the exact same operating system. The Stoic mantra that it is not events that upset us, but our judgments about those events.
Yes.
The event, the lost job, the illness is just a thunderstorm happening in the field.
Yeah.
The judgment is the knower getting confused and thinking it's getting wet.
We see the echo in Buddhism as well. The practice of whetting the axe of sharp detachment to cleave the clinging roots of the aswatha tree is virtually identical to the core of Buddhist teaching.
Severing attachment.
Exactly. Buddhism identifies attachment and grasping as the absolute root of human suffering, and enlightenment is the process of severing those attachments to realize the illusion of the separate, grasping ego.
And if we look west, the description of a force that is motionless yet still moving sounds exactly like Aristotle's concept of the prime mover.
Right, the uncaused cause.
The uncaused cause that sets everything in motion without being moved itself. Or looking east again, the Taoist concept of the eternal, nameless Tao. The text says this ultimate is sustaining all, yet dwells he unattached, which is exactly how the Tao is described, nourishing 10,000 things without ruling over any of them.
What this proves is that human consciousness faces a universal dilemma. Regardless of the cultural vocabulary, whether they used ancient Indian cosmology, Greek logic, or Chinese mysticism, human beings across the globe have universally recognized the exhausting turmoil of the material world.
We've all felt it.
We have all felt the shifting winds of the Gunas, and they have all desperately sought a way to anchor themselves in something immutable.
It proves that this isn't just academic theory. It is a profound shared human yearning. No matter who you are or when you lived, you eventually realize you want to step off the chaotic roller coaster.
You just want some peace.
You want to stop being yanked around by your burning ambitions, your heavy exhaustions, your fragile, temporary joys. You want to find that quiet, unshakable center.
And the ultimate comfort provided by the text is the assurance that the center is not located on a mountaintop or in some distant galaxy.
It's right here.
The text explicitly states it is planted in every heart. It promises that those who are enlightened, they perceive that spirit in themselves. The journey is not an escape velocity out of the universe. It is a quiet realization inward.
It's the sudden, startling realization that you are the one sitting on the couch. You have been safe the entire time. And I want to bring all of these massive cosmic insights down to one final lingering thought for you to carry into the reality of your life today.
That's a great way to wrap up.
We've talked about the VR headset and the upside-down tree and the weather of the three qualities, but I want you to imagine waking up tomorrow morning and viewing your entire life, your given name, your job title, your bank account, your anxieties, even your physical reflection in the mirror as a temporary suit that you have borrowed for a little while.
A temporary suit.
It's a magnificent, complex suit, but it is not you. When you walk into your next highly stressful meeting, or when you sit down to have a difficult conversation with your partner, what would happen if you wore that suit just a little more lightly?
Just a bit looser.
Yeah. If someone insults the suit, it doesn't touch the knower inside. If the suit gets tired, the knower observes the fatigue without despair. You are not the suit. You are the light of lights, shining eternally in the dark, gathering the sense of the world without ever being stained by them.
It changes everything.
It does. How much lighter, how much braver could you be today if you truly believed that the real you cannot possibly be damaged by your hardest day?
That is the ultimate question to leave them with.
That's the heart of this section. This is wisdom for the present, where understanding leads to clarity, and clarity shapes how we see and live. We'll see you in the next episode.